cure, Trump says 0. Can you believe it? I honestly can't believe 0. Now, I don't believe 0 either, but it's so low, they're registering near 0. Now, I'm no fan of the IRS. I think that in the United States, our tax policy is backwards and crooked and busted. And it targets people. It doesn't make sense. It's basically this game. Fighting is easier. It's this game where everybody is speeding and hoping they don't get caught. And then half the people who get pulled over didn't do anything wrong. What does it mean to get pulled over as it pertains to the IRS? And why is it good Trump is firing all these people? How many of you, comment below, tell me right now, how many of you got a letter in the mail after you already filed your taxes saying you owed extra money and you didn't know why? So you get a bill in the mail from the IRS and it says you actually owe us another $324. And you're sitting there scratching your head being like, for what? And it was like based on paperwork that you didn't file, someone else reported you owe us this money. You want to fight it? Good luck, call a lawyer. If the average person doesn't know what to do. The average person says, I guess I have no choice but to pay it. The IRS is coming after me. Not to mention the fact that people use the fear of the IRS to launch scams against the American people. So I say this, lay off. Most people file their tax returns. They're doing the job they're supposed to be doing. Stop nickel and diming everybody. If the government wasn't cranking out this deficit spending, and don't get me wrong, Trump's big beautiful bill does do that, they wouldn't need these people to nickel and dime you. But let me just point out, my friends, 26,000 agency staff. Can we just calculate the average salaries? I don't know what the average salary is. Let's try this. What's the average salary of an IRS agent? The average salary of an IRS agent in the U.S. is approximately $60,000. Can you believe it? $60,000. We're getting rid of 26,000 of these people, which means Donald Trump has brought you savings of $1.5 billion per year. So I do think, can you believe, this is crazy. 26,000 agency staff. How much money do they need to take from you to pay their own salaries? This is a funny thing people need to consider when it comes to stuff like this. You know, I'm doing street fundraising, canvassing for these nonprofits, right? And what people need to understand is you got to pay that person on the street. And if that person on the street's getting paid $20 an hour, that means every hour they need to raise at least $20, otherwise the company's losing money. So let's read this story and figure out what exactly is going on. Of course, my friends, smash the like button, share the show, subscribe to this channel, and share the video everywhere on social media. Those shares, man, it does mean everything. Let people know. Let's be happy. The Washington Times says the Trump admin has slashed the IRS workforce by nearly 26,000 people through buyouts and firings, marking a 25% reduction in staffing. This, of course, from yesterday. The cuts sliced through some of the most prominent IRS divisions, taking out 27% of the tax examiners, 26% of the revenue agents. The Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration said information technology is shedding 23% of its workforce, and the Management and Analysis Division will lose 28% of its staff. These separations will have nationwide implications, the Inspector General said. The data, which was current as of May, showed that most of the departing staffers have accepted one of the administration's various buyout offers. That included about 4,600 approved under the initial January buyout offer and 17,000 approved for voluntary early retirement. Thousands more were part of smaller separation programs, and about 300 were from an official reduction in force. Alex Muricianu, senior policy analyst at the Tax Foundation, said staffing cuts aren't always a problem. However, he said they can be a problem when coupled with new roles for the IRS, such as during the pandemic emergency, and could come into play as the agency implements changes from Mr. Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill Act. We call that an omnibus. Donald Trump gives it a fancy name. No, we call that an omnibus bill, and we don't like that, but sure. The confluence of low staffing levels and new policies and messy mix, I think that is a potential challenge in the coming tax season. But let me just lay it all out for you, my friends. When they cut the bloat and the scams as they were dumping billions of dollars into NGOs, wipe that out. Maybe they'll stop extracting from your pocket to pay for fancy lawyers in, I don't know, McLean, Virginia. highest median county in the country. And you go to these places, man, I have to wonder. You think Bel Air, you think Hollywood? Hollywood's trash. Like, no disrespect, okay? But, like, Hollywood is hood, okay? People go to Hollywood, they're all excited. It's like one-story buildings, and they're selling pizza and Chinese food, and they got stars on the street. It's not as crazy as people think it is. You want to go look at the wealth? Look at, like, I don't know. Well, I was going to say the Palisades, but the Palisades is basically, well, anyway, go to Loudoun County. Go to Tyson's Corner Mall, and you're walking through this mall, which is 3 stories, and every shop is like designer fashion boutiques. I don't even know what the point of going to that mall is, but apparently people go. Get a coffee and a gelato, I guess, with pistachio cream. And then everything else, it's just like Gucci and Louis Vuitton. And that's an understatement too, because those are the mall brands. Like, it's all weird high-end boutiques. Anyway, the final result, they say. Well, let me go back. Mr. Trump's cuts would have gone deeper. Could have, really. In February and March, the IRS tried to fire more than 7,300 probationary employees. Some ended up taking buyouts. After legal wrangling, the IRS canceled other firings, and about 3,000 returned to work. Those judges. The final result is that the IRS expects to lose some 25,680 employees because of Trump administration separations, the Inspector General said. Some remain on the books under the terms of their buyouts on paid administrative leave through September or the end of the year. When they are gone, the IRS workforce will drop to 77,000, down from 103,000 in January. Fights over IRS staffing have long been proxy for broader questions about tax policy. Republicans demand a slimmer agency that they say will be less scary to taxpayers. And Democrats say the agency needs more people to ensure the rich are paying what they owe. You don't need more people. You can literally just, for every billionaire, hire one guy. There you go. They don't need to do that. They're lying to you, okay? It's as I described. They want you to be running this.
The Nye County Sheriff's Office can confirm that the FBI executed a search warrant.
That Evans had work done at her house back in April of 2018 at a cost of $89,000 that was paid by VEA funds. He then texted Berukowitz to tell him that the board of directors was meeting the next morning and it would be, quote, dramatic if he could make an arrest at that time. So, Berukowitz drafted a second search warrant seeking to obtain records at VEA. This affidavit said that during the sex crime cover-up investigation, an unnamed street source told Berukowitz that Evans had $89,000 worth of work at her house to move her power lines underground and build them to Valley Electric. The affidavit said that an investigator interviewed an employee who confirmed the work was done at Evans's house and that customers usually paid for this work. The affidavit said another unnamed street source provided printouts of the 2 work orders. The affidavit attached images of the printouts and said that another detective observed that Evans's property is the only residence on that block that does not have power lines running across the back easement. Missing from the affidavit was the fact that the street source who initiated the allegations was actually Johnson, and omitted any information about Johnson's prior work relationship to Evans and VEA. Also missing was the fact that the interviewed employee told the detective that no power lines were buried on the property. Rather, he had moved a pole and a guy wire that protruded into the yard and had heard of no misconduct at VEA. Also missing was the fact that the second so-called street source who provided the work orders was Berukowitz's close friend who worked in a line shed at VEA and had done no work at Evans's house. Berukowitz obtained the second search warrant in the late afternoon of February 26th, swearing out the affidavit before the same judge who had approved the first search warrant. He then went to VEA to conduct the record search as provided in the warrant. When he arrived at VEA, Berukowitz spoke with Angela Evans and asked her whether she had any power lines buried on her property that were paid for by VEA. She denied the allegation and said that prior to her purchase of the house, she facilitated a discussion between the contractor and VEA about moving a pole and a guy wire from the property she was interested in purchasing, so that a wall could be built. She said it was likely paid for by the contractor and that she probably paid for it when closing on the property. During the search, the records told Bruchwitz they did not have records as described in the warrant, but that they had records showing that a pole and a guy wire had been moved from the Evans property in April 2018. Around 5:30 p.m., the records custodians printed out the documents they found and handed them to Bruchwitz, who said that he and his officers were done with the search and were leaving the property to go home, commenting that it was the end of the workday. The CFO began to escort Bruchwitz and his team from the building when Bruchwitz altered his path of exit to go down a hall to where the VEA private offices were located, prompting the CFO to say, "You've taken a wrong turn." As Bruchwitz walked down the hallway, he observed that Evans was still there, working in her private office. Rather than asking to speak with Evans as he had done when he entered the building, Bruchwitz asked the CFO if he and his officers could stop and use a private office for a moment. The CFO said yes. The officers then went into an adjacent office where Bruchwitz told the officers that they had developed probable cause for an arrest. Bruchwitz then emerged from the office and walked down the private hallway to Evans's office, where around 5:40 p.m. and without a warrant, he barged into Angela Evans's office, passing the CFO who stood in the doorway. "One last thing, Angela. You're under arrest for embezzlement." He then began reciting Miranda warnings, the arrest being fully captured on body cam. After being handcuffed, officers perp-walked Evans from her office through the building in front of VEA employees and into a parking lot. There, while still in handcuffs, she was publicly frisked in front of cars driving by, put into the caged backseat of the squad car, and taken to the Nye County Sheriff's Office detention facility. There, she was booked, photographed, and jailed. The body cam footage and images of Angela Evans being cuffed and booked were incorporated into a video press release that Bruchwitz orchestrated and posted on the internet that evening. The release was an elaborate video storyboard featuring snippets from body cam recordings of the arrest and B-roll of the VEA search from search warrant number 1.
The Nye County Sheriff's Office is currently investigating allegations that embezzlement is occurring at Valley Electric by CEO Angela Evans and Valley Electric board members. The allegation include that they spent VEA monies to pay off key management employees to keep quiet a sexual harassment misconduct incident that occurred by then CEO Thomas Husted. During the course of this investigation, a source came to the Nye County Sheriff's Office investigators and advised that CEO Angela Evans had Valley Electric do approximately $89,000 worth of work at her home to move her power lines underground. It is alleged that she billed the work to Valley Electric. The source advised that the work was done April of 2018 and was able to provide work order information and names of Valley Electric employees who knew of the work being done. Nye County Sheriff's Office investigators interviewed a Valley Electric employee who confirmed that the work was done, but was unable to confirm how the work was paid for. A check of public records revealed an address of a home owned by Angela Evans in the winery area of Pahrump. Nye County Sheriff's Office investigators went to the property on February 26th and took photographs. Her property is the only residence on the block that does not have power lines along the back easement of the property. The Nye County Sheriff's Office executed a second search warrant at Valley Electric on February 26, 2019. The warrant requested electronic records of any and all work orders for CEO Angela Evans' residence. After execution of the search warrant, the records identified that the cost of the work, valued at approximately $75,000, was not paid for by Angela Evans, but was billed to the Valley Electric Cooperative. CEO Angela Evans was placed under arrest. She was booked into the Nye County Detention Center and charged with embezzlement.
I don't know who needs to hear this, but paying over $150 for insurance every month is not something you should be doing. If you have any
After the false arrest of Angela Evans, Berukowitz filed a declaration that contained his probable cause statement.
Involved the former CEO here, Thomas Houston. Evans has been charged with embezzlement. She is expected to...
Rabia's decision to not prosecute Angela Evans is his decision and has nothing to do with the Nye County Sheriff's Office or the court who approved the warrant and found probable cause.
So after all of this, how did Berukowitz end up getting caught? In some of the legal filings, I found as an exhibit an unclassified report from the FBI, mostly all redacted, but it shows that on January 24th of 2022, somebody from the Las Vegas branch of the FBI opened a public corruption investigation into Captain David Berukowitz. Most of it is redacted, but it seems like the civil lawsuit that Angela Evans subsequently filed against Nye County and David Berukowitz likely alerted the FBI and also provided much of the substance of the investigation allegations. The report noted that the case would be investigated as a sensitive investigative matter, as Berukowitz was then holding the position of captain for the Nye County Sheriff's Office, where he was in charge of the day-to-day operations, and also where recently they learned that Berukowitz was named a special assistant to the sheriff due to her deteriorating health. They noted that it was rumored that Berukowitz was working to appoint a close associate as the captain. Next thing you know, August 4th of 2022, this bizarre video appears on Nye County's YouTube channel and their Facebook page, where Berukowitz himself announces that they were served with a warrant from the FBI.
The Nye County Sheriff's Office can confirm that the FBI executed a search warrant on our agency yesterday. Although a warrant was not necessary because Sheriff Sharon Worley has always turned over records to the FBI upon request, upon their presentation of the warrant, all records requested were turned over. The affidavit for the warrant was sealed, and since the FBI is the investigating agency for the warrant, all questions relating to that investigation would need to be directed to the FBI, and no further comment will come from this office.
Then, on August 18th of 2023, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Nevada issues a press release titled "Nye County Captain Indicted for Federal Violations," announcing that Captain Berukowitz had appeared in federal court on that day after being arrested on federal wire fraud, perjury, and civil rights violations arising from the February 2019 false arrest of former CEO VEA Angela Evans. The press release noted that the indictment alleged that Berukowitz committed federal wire fraud when he caused each of those press releases to be issued from the Nye County Sheriff's Office. Lastly, It noted the indictment charged Berukowitz with perjury for falsely testifying during a federal civil deposition about his knowledge and level of involvement in the circumstances surrounding the arrest. On March 12th of 2025, another press release was issued informing the public that Berukowitz had now pled guilty to a federal civil rights violation and to wire fraud, and that he was scheduled to be sentenced on June 10th, 2025, and was facing a potential 21 years in prison. But shockingly, when that day came, he ended up getting sentenced to only 3 years probation and 0 days in federal prison.
No prison time for David Berukowitz, who was sentenced today after unlawfully arresting a utility company CEO in Pahrump. 8 News Now investigator Kyle Payne has more on this day-long sentencing.
Brian, Denise, no prison time and 3 years probation for former police captain David Berukowitz in federal court at 9:30 this morning. And it took an entire day in front of the judge until he learned his sentence.
By pleading guilty, Berukowitz avoided a perjury charge and 2 additional charges related to wire fraud.
Berukowitz also has to pay a $35,000 fine by pleading guilty, which he did earlier this year. He avoided a perjury charge and 2 additional charges related to wire fraud. Denise.
So we can also tell you tonight that Berukowitz, meanwhile, retired from his job with Nye County last year, and the Review-Journal telling us public records show he's still receiving PERS retirement benefits totaling about $72,000 a year.
And that's it. That's the end of the story. People already have such little faith in law enforcement. They constantly think that there's corruption behind the scenes. I hear it all the time. Here, not only was it true, but the FBI got involved and found all of the receipts, exposed the entire thing. And the icing on the cake is the fact that the taxpayers are now paying this guy $72,000 a year after what he had done. That was the outcome, where the stars aligned and the FBI swooped in and exposed the entire thing. That was the outcome. No jail time, and let's pay him $72,000 a year for doing nothing. Pretty crazy, am I right? I'm curious to know what you think. Let me know in a comment. Subscribe both here and at the blog, civilrightslawyer.com. You can follow me on X at JohnBryanESQ. Remember, our rights don't end where your fear begins. Freedom is scary. Deal with it.
Rich, I just know how to work with AI.
It's 2025. AI can build a...
Welcome once again to Leto's Law. Here's Steve Leto.
I'm sure every now and then you've encountered one of those crazy house parties where there's a house with a gigantic party going on that spills out into the streets. Whether it's happened in your neighborhood or someone else's neighborhood, if you've driven near one, you know what I'm talking about. And so Jerry sent me a note and said, check out this story from MoneyWise. A North Carolina neighborhood had such a thing happening in it. So some neighbors called the police, and when the police showed up, they found out that the owners of the house were not there, but the party was being hosted by the lawn guy, the guy who did the lawn. And the allegation is that he didn't have permission to do that because the owners of the house were out of town. So Danielle Antos wrote this. A massive party to $4.3 million mansion in North Carolina was allegedly held without the owner's permission, and it landed a man in jail, according to WSOC TV. They say that the man broke into a client's home and held a graduation party for his son while the owners were away. He was charged with breaking and entering, property damage, and obtaining property by false pretenses. Now, he's posted a bond and he's out, but he maintains that what he did wasn't criminal. I didn't break the law. I just broke some rules, probably with my owners, but I didn't break the law. Now, officers say they were called to the $1 Million Mansion last Saturday night after neighbors reported blocked roads, loud noise, and a traffic hazard. When they got there, they say at first when they interviewed this man, he said he owned the house. Then he said he was the homeowner's grandson. before finally admitting that he was actually simply the landscaper. Now, don't get me wrong. When I say simply the landscaper, I'm not belittling landscapers. But when it comes to the hierarchy of who owns or gets to use something, you start at the top with the owner. And then it would be a few steps down before you got to the landscaper. So he claims the party was a graduation party for his son and some friends. He told reporters they were aiming to create a positive environment and generate a little income. Now, that's an interesting twist. We'll get there. Deputies found far more than just a wholesome celebration. It was mostly teenagers and young adults. They say maybe 300 to 400 people were at the house, and there was underage drinking going on, according to a lieutenant who spoke to the news. Deputies also seized $3,000 in cash, which they said was entrance fees. They say that the man was charging. The man says that he was in fact charging money, but he said it was to cover security costs. He also denied charging a cover fee. And he says he never told the police that he owned the home. He says, I never spoke to them about anything, about who stayed there or who owned the place.
Here in California, we have lots of climate events. When you have solar and a power wall, I get to control all that.
So these are the top mistakes that I see Toyota and Lexus owners do, and I wish nobody would do, especially when your Toyota and Lexus are still newer or you bought a 2-3-year-old up to a 5-year-old one. These are top mistakes that I wish nobody would do, because detrimental to the longevity of your car. Let's get started with the video and we'll talk about them in detail. Let's start with the super basics. Oil changes. Folks, the list is endless of the customers that I gave bad news to on their engine that burns oil, has BBTI problems, have all kinds of issue because they follow the manufacturer's recommendation of 10,000 mile oil changes. And let me just, before we get into the debate, we are not going to end this video, but let me say one thing. Oil companies that write 15,000 mile or 10,000 mile guaranteed on their bottle, filter, or whatever the case, what are they guaranteeing? That the filter will be okay or your engine will be okay? That's what we're trying to understand. Is the oil going to be okay, but your engine is not? Or are they guaranteeing the engine? Because if they are guaranteeing the engine, that's a free extended warranty. I'd like that in writing, please. When the engine blows up at 150,000 miles, are they going to replace it for free? How does that work? That's the problem, folks. 10,000 mile oil changes are in perfect conditions. Do we have perfect conditions though? 99% of people don't. That's the reality, folks. And I don't understand why in 2025 we have to beg people to take care of their cars. Because I'm gonna just say the truth as it is. sugarcoat it. That's why we don't take any sponsors on this channel, because we can talk completely free. I own an automotive shop. We specialize in Toyota and Lexus. We don't make money doing an oil change at all. Sometimes we lose money. That's just, we have to take care of our customers. And if all the car needs is an oil change, that's what all the car needs. The end. When we rebuild an engine that burns oil, that's where we make our living, because that's where the skilled work is, that's where the big job is. But here I am telling you, I dislike building engines that were burning oil or have other issues because of neglect. Because it just breaks my heart. Folks are spending their hard-earned money fixing an engine that they owned this car since new, if they would have just done their oil change on time. And then here's the biggest problem. We're getting to a point that the trust is so broken between car owners and mechanics that folks are trending toward trusting other sources. And I understand that. I understand that fully. This is a self-inflicted thing. I get it. But here's the problem. You go online, everybody swears by the 10,000-mile oil changes. That's okay. But are they going to guarantee your engine, though? That's the problem. Is this oil company that's promising all this stuff going to guarantee your engine? Or are you guaranteeing your engine? Because the conversation I have with a customer sitting in front of me, presented with a giant bill to rebuild their engine because it burns oil and going through catalytic converters and fouling spark plugs, or the VVTi system continuously clogs the oil control valves, and we're going over and over and over. That's the person you're going to deal with. Someone like me giving you a giant bill. Not the oil company, because they will vanish in thin air. Not the person online that told you, oh, I've been doing 10,000-mile oil changes, nothing happens. These mechanics are trying to sell you more stuff. How about this? Do your own oil change. You save money. You don't have to deal with a mechanic. You buy any oil you want. You get to control everything, torque everything in spec. Nothing gets stripped, damaged, whatnot. Do your own oil change, folks. If you're a Toyota or Lexus owner, 5,000 miles. And that's not it. 6 months is even more important than ever. Here's the new trend with all Toyota new engines. They're so tightly sealed. The PCV systems are very sealed and very contained. They're building a lot of moisture. And this is not really just the modern ones, even the old ones. You can't go 2 years on the same oil just because you don't drive your car. That is a lot more harmful than going 10,000 miles in a 6-month period. Just so we understand that part. And I get this question all the time. Well, I only drive 1,000 miles a year. I'm just going to change the oil once a year. Well, the problem is by the end of the year, if you really look into that oil, it's full of moisture. And the problem is if you take a sample and send it to the lab, well, did the water settle and you took the sample from the part that does not have the moisture in it? That's the problem. Unless you, this is something, I'm just going to share this with you real quick, because a lot of you also have asked. Oil analysis. Folks, oil analysis is super accurate. But is it? Here's the problem with oil analysis. The folks at the lab, they're legit. They have science in front of them. There is no question of a doubt. But you know what the problem with that is? Your sample. You're taking a sample in an uncontrolled environment. In my opinion, you should drain the entire capacity of the oil, send it to the lab, the whole thing, so they can select multiple samples and test them and verify that we have an even reading. That's the problem. And then there is even a little bit more than that. What about the stuff that didn't drain? Because that's usually where the horrible stuff is. What about the tiny little passages where the variable valve timing system, for example, works? This oil rarely gets moving because being hydraulically controlled, it pushes something and then moves back. That's the problem, folks. This is where, be careful. Keep it simple. 5,000 miles, 6 months. No matter what anybody else says. You will never have issues with your Toyota. Use quality oil. Don't go buy the most expensive oil, but don't buy recycled oil either. And whatever you do, I know this debate will go on forever, don't buy any oil filter but the original. Is it the best filter in the world? No. But is it what your engine needs? Yes. Can you get a better filtering filter? Sure. But is that filter going to sit right in the, especially in the canister style? I see this problem all the time. Filters are basically not filtering because they're not sitting right. That's a problem, folks.
Until now, game changer. They have a wire trimming kit that's universal. It's going to fit any weed eater. They have different sizes.
The next one is transmission fluid, and this is another one that please don't go into this one. Lifetime transmission fluid, sealed transmission fluid. This is the number one argument at our shop with car owners when they come in too late to try to change the transmission fluid. Folks, don't do this. Toyota transmission, for the most part, some of them have problems. Of course, nothing's perfect, but most of them generally reliable if you take care of them. Take care of them, change the fluid. If you have a car with WS fluid, which basically any car that doesn't have a dipstick, 60,000 miles or 6 years. WS fluid tends to be on the hygroscopic side. That's hence why the 6 years part. So it absorbs moisture as well. 60,000 miles is a good interval. It's not too low where it's too much, because transmissions, you don't want to overdo them either. Don't change your transmission fluid every 10,000 miles either, because that's actually not good. Nor is it too high where now the fluid is really contaminated and the additives are broken down and whatnot. 60,000 miles, 6 years. Either whether you tow, you don't, whether this is a commercial car or a city-driven car, or short trips, long trips, 6 years, 60,000. Folks, please don't go for the lifetime stuff. Nothing is lifetime. What is lifetime? Is it the length of the warranty? This is the number one thing that I get asked in the shop. At our shop, because we've seen issues with transmissions, if the transmission has never had a service and it has over 100,000 miles, we typically decline service. We do not service them because we have seen issues, because at that point the risk increased tremendously. And if we service your transmissions over 100,000 miles and you have issues, you're naturally going to blame us, and I get it. So we don't want to take that risk. That's as simple as that. So please get your transmission serviced on time. Every 60,000, 6 years. You're going to start at 60,000, 120, 180. We keep going from there up to, I hope, 1 million miles with not a single problem. But take care of it. And the other thing is, don't go chasing after a transmission filter with Toyota and Lexus. This is something I see all the time, folks. I tell folks, you don't really need that, but they insist. I feel like they're wasting their money, flat out. But in the end, if I am telling you you're wasting your money and you want to waste it still, I mean, I'm not going to argue with you. It's your car, your money. You decide. You were given all the facts. That's a waste of money, flat out. If your transmission has 150,000 miles and you've never serviced the transmission fluid, you have problems with solenoids, all kinds of stuff, and you have to pull the pan down, then replace the filter. If you pull the pan for a leak, sure, let's throw a new filter in. But otherwise, there is no reason. If you change your fluid every 60,000 miles, don't waste your money on a filter, and especially the 8-speed transmission, which is a major operation to do a filter. You basically have to pull the subframe down because it has a front pan. Don't waste your money on that, folks. Just change the fluid, 60,000, 6 years, you'll never have problems. And the last important note on transmission fluid, don't overdo it. I see this all the time. This is another top question that get asked, especially from the DIY community. Well, I want to replace the entire capacity of the transmission. I don't want to just replace the 3 cords, 4 cords in the pan. Folks, don't do that. That's the whole point. You don't want to replace the entire capacity of the transmission. You want to replace what's in the pan. That's the point. Try to avoid flushing a transmission fluid. Some of you have done it. It works great, but it's not exactly the best thing long term for a transmission. Change what's in the pan, drain it, fill it with the original fluid, check the fluid level, call it a day, see you in 60,000 miles or 6 years. I see folks in the quest of wanting to replace every single drop, they'll do a transmission fluid every oil change for the next 5 oil changes. That's actually not good for your transmission, folks. Heads up. So don't overdo it, but don't not do it. Find a medium, just 60,000 miles, 6 years for Toyota Lexus transmissions.
websites. In one tab,
Coolant is the next one that, folks, Toyota. I've used two coolants. If you take aside the Subaru one, BMW one, then the Supra and whatnot. The main ones, red coolant, pink coolant. Pink is super long life. Red is just long life. I don't know these names. So pink coolant is where we have problems. And you know what? Some folks have blamed the pink coolant for leaks, problems. Oh, this coolant eats seals, eats stuff. But nobody has actually seen the difference between the two. Because if you leave red coolant for 100,000 miles in the engine, you're going to have a lot more problems than pink coolant. Here's the thing. Toyota switched to the pink coolant around 2003, 2004. With the red coolant, you were supposed to replace it every 30,000 miles. With pink coolant, it went up to 100,000 miles. Folks, that is on the high side from what we're seeing in our experience. You take this coolant that high, it becomes acidic, starts attacking gaskets, starts attacking seals, starts attacking water pump bearings, and it just, that's the problem. So some folks have said, oh, I have 200,000 miles, and that's the problem. Folks will listen to that one person. My car has 200,000 miles. I never changed the coolant. I don't have a single problem. What is this guy talking about? Well, are you sure you don't have any problems? That's the problem. Folks, keep it simple. These cars don't require a lot of maintenance, but they do require their maintenance on time. With coolant, the best interval we have found from experience, 50,000 miles, 5 years. Do it yourself. There's plenty of videos. There's maybe one or two Toyota or Lexus models a little bit involved with bleeding the coolant, but the rest of them are very basic. If you don't want to get ripped off by a mechanic and spend all this money and whatnot, do it yourself. But get it done on time. Also, don't overdo it. Coolant doesn't hurt if you overdo it, but the only thing I see with coolant is we want to drain the block. We want to drain this because I want to get every last drop. Folks, you can't. Even when you drain the block, because taking an engine out of a car, you drain the block, everything, you turn it upside down, half a gallon rolls out of it. That is normal, folks. You can't take every last drop. You want to replace the majority. Drain the radiator. If the block drain accessible, be careful with block drains because we have seen them seize and break because they're brass. If you don't have a block drain, don't do anything else. Drain the radiator, fill up with new fluid, and that's that. Every 50,000 miles, 5 years. What about brake fluid? See, this one is also heavily debated. Folks, we replace brake fluid with moisture. Brake fluid is hygroscopic, meaning it absorbs moisture. High moisture in the brake fluid and steel line, steel actuator, and steel starts corroding stuff, and you have all kinds of problems. You need to test it because technically the brake system is a sealed one. That cap that you have does not actually allow things. It has a one-way valve. It does not allow moisture in. It allows kind of a release of pressure out. But then how many cars do you think come in the shop with a brake fluid cap missing? And the brake fluid the moisture is through the roof, off the scale on our tester. You'd be surprised. Pause this video right now. Go to your car, open the hood, look at the brake cap. Is it there? Great. The next time you want to think about brake fluid replacement, test it. You can buy the tester yourself. It's a simple little strip, put it in the fluid, or there's electronic ones. Lately, the electronic ones have not been very accurate. I would get the strip. You can actually use the same one to test coolant. They're a little bit pricey, they're good ones, but you buy one of them and you'll have it for the rest of your life. You don't really have to worry about any of your car getting ripped off. Do I need this? Do I need? Just test them. Simple as that. There's no interval. The earliest I've seen cars needing brake replacement is 2 to 3 years. Some of them go 10 years and they don't need replacement. So gotta check the brake fluid. There's no real interval for it. But don't go doing it every 20,000 miles just because. Test it and test it yourself. Even if you don't work on cars, you will never do anything. Buy the tester. See, that 2-minute process will save you so much. Buy the tester. It's a little strip. Open the cap. Don't forget to close the cap when we're done, though. Put it in there. Make sure you don't drip it on paint, because make sure you wear gloves. If brake fluid is really not good for your skin. Let it sit on the side. Test it. If it needs replacement, great. Now let's take it and get it replaced. Simple as that. And lastly, this one is usually, you know, Toyotas are reliable cars, but they start having real problems like everybody else when you use non-original parts. I can create a 4-hour video of how many customers walk in this shop with a car and their statement starts with, I had my struts replaced and the new replacement struts ride worse than my blown, worn out struts that I just replaced them with. That is a very common concern here. Folks use original parts. And you know what the problem with original parts? And I get it. They're expensive. That's the number one thing. They're not easily accessible, and you have to go through the dealer, and folks have a thing with the dealer, and I get that. But use original parts. As simple as that. You've owned this Camry for 15 years. It's been the most reliable car you ever owned. Nothing has happened. Now you need struts, you need brakes,